I probably tried out Wonderful 101 maybe one time at my friend's house way back when on the Wii U. Not too sure really, kind of hard to say. But yeah, my time with it is very limited. And at the time I was already a fan of Platinum games when it came out, so it wasn't that I didn't want to play it, it was just on the Wii U. And I never had one of my own, so it just passed me by. But hey, luckily it was remastered to modern consoles, so now I can easily give this well-beloved game a shot for myself finally. But first, this is combat overview. In this series, I go over the general controls to the game's main mechanic or mechanics, who or what we use those tools on, and then seeing how it all comes together. Bit more in depth, but that's what we do. Wonderful 101 is a top-down action game with a lot of familiar tools we like to see. Stingers, launchers, perfect dodges and all. But toss in the wrench of having to manage this whole group of members as your main playable character. Kind of a wild concept, so pretty interested to see how it works out. So the basics. The main mechanic here is the Wonderliner on the right thumbstick. You'll use this to draw certain shapes which create your main weapon to use. And each of these have their own distinct roles and uses, making each one very different from each other. Now this leads into having you swap between them all depending on the situation, which is pretty cool already. So the first one we start with is this hand. Draw a circle to bring out a fist, which is great for close range fights and is mainly focuses on a single enemy. Then we get a sword, just draw a straight line, and there you go. Its damage in comparison isn't as high, but it has way more range. Because of that, it's a great crowd control option instead. And a whip by drawing this S. Good damage on a single enemy as well, but its main use is to rip spikes off enemies, and you can actually lift objects and enemies off the ground with this. There's a few more morphs you'll come across and learn as you play the game, but these are the first few, and you can see how the game goes about handling them already. Also, by drawing a shape, it doesn't have to be your main weapon. You can instead press triangle to do this kind of quick summon version to attack alongside you for a brief moment, which is good for extra damage and combo potential. Now it's not just about remembering the morphs and how to draw their shapes, which isn't too crazy of a task. What we do need to do is juggle the group's formation and where and how you draw. And that's because drawing larger shapes will create bigger versions, which will make them do a specific job a lot better. But there's a problem with those longer lines. So you run the risk of it being broken since it's so far out. This gives enemies more of a chance to hit it, or you might run into environmental hazards with it. So you need to figure out where these open spaces are safe to draw, and that might require you to draw in different angles like left, right, upside down, that sort of thing. Now even the group is also at risk, because if they get hit, they'll be flung off every which way, which is no good because if you don't have enough members in formation, you won't be able to draw, which means you can't attack, and we don't want to go lose a major function like that. So, to help bring everyone close and out of harm's way, just organize in general. Holding square will regroup everyone. Now this is a great way to reposition around hazards and attacks, and you kind of need to master this because if not, you won't be able to attack like we saw, but it also takes away the ability to use defensive options as well. So yeah, you cannot lose formation at all costs. Speaking of which, now onto defenses. So one thing to note, even though you have this army of people to control, only you being hit will take damage to your health. So if the group gets hit, it won't directly lead to health loss, but they indirectly can pretty much. Because again, no options if there's no one nearby. Because of that, it makes it the most basic defensive option to know is just to manage the group in the middle of a fight with hazards and enemies attacking and all that. But we still have the staples here as well. We have something called Guts Unite. Pressing L2 will have everyone form up to block, which counters more blunt attacks. So stuff like punches or even these projectiles. It can even counter 2 enemies at once if things line up. You just can't hold it though to stay up forever. It'll drop on its own after some time, which means you gotta time it. In R2, we have Spring Unite. It's a dodge. Best used for attacks that Guts can't handle pretty much. Solid iframes on it as well, but nothing out of it for now at the start. So just used to reposition early on. And both of these cancel attacks, so they're very good reactionary options. Now we're not done yet, because defense is kinda wild here. Yes, we have the standard block and dodge, right? But even our morphs are defensive options too. Like lasers, for example, can be reflected by the sword, or how the hand can absorb fire, and the hammer can block your head from falling projectiles. Super interesting and just more options to decide which is best for that situation. So your offensive options are also your defensive options as well. Super cool stuff. Alright, onto our HUD. Green meter is our health, of course. Little icon to the left is our current morph. And these batteries underneath is used for a lot of things. Every time you dodge or use Unite Guts, or when we draw, it'll use a battery. And keep in mind the longer lines mean way more battery is being used up. So to refill it, landing hits will do just fine, and it'll even refill on its own slowly over time. But to really add to it, successful Unite Guts and Spring will do the job. But keep in mind every time you start a mission, it'll be reset. Just need to collect 20 small batteries around the stage each time to get an extra bump to the bar. Onto the enemies, they have great tells. This little tank, for example, it'll expand its barrel, and then this ring will close in to let you know when it's going to shoot, to give you a nice little timing to it. Or how it'll pop a wheelie before rushing you. Well, up to a certain point, once you take that shield off, they give no warning when they'll rush you. They kind of go from 0 to 100. Small fry who usually come in groups, which means the sword is best to swat them away. But the attack they have is lifting up the sword, and once you see a flicker, it'll rush. Big guys will jump slam, either run up and kick, or go into this enraged mode rushing you down, while having hyper armor. More medium-sized enemies will do this electric field around them before diving towards you, or they'll wind up this punch. And these armored turtles bring out the hammer for these guys to break their shell. You can parry the foot, which makes them lean to a certain side. You can use a fist to topple them over, you can pick them up with the whip to throw, or you can just hammer them over and over again. Just don't stay in front of them though, they'll snap at you. There's more, but they all have their own little things to learn and figure out about them, which just gives you multiple ways to approach them depending on the situation. And that's Wonderful 101. Well, just like Kamiya's other games, he brought his own creative flair. But this time he brought it with full force. It still has a strong art direction. Of course, the arcadey straight to the point combat that's extremely fun because of its involved mechanics. But Wonderful 101 is much more than that. Can't help but think these character designs are reminiscent of Beautiful Joe. Some are similar to Bayonetta and Dante a bit. In combat wise, we have witch time, fingers, uppers, drawing mechanics kind of like Okami, and many genre switch ups than ever before. There's a lot. Good or bad, that's up to you for you to decide. But yeah, I mentioned all this because pretty early on you can just tell it's a pure passion project of a game. From the cast, both allies and enemies, their dialogue and little interactions to the over-the-top cutscenes. And if you look around close enough, you can see callbacks and references. Seeing Team Wonderful playing off the Team Beautiful logo from back in the day. And the character Wonder Cheerleader is actually the Sylvia from Beautiful Joe. It's just so cool to see these little things like this because you know they're giving some love towards everything they've done up to this point, all while looking forward to what's to come afterwards. There's nothing but care and attention put into everything, which just gives this game full of character and charm and heart. Definitely made by Kamiya himself and made for us, the fans of his games, no matter if it was Capcom, Clover, Platinum, whatever. This was made for everyone who's played those games over the years, and it really made 101 feel like this huge celebration. Because I'd recommend playing this till after a few games deep into their past stuff to really get those moments to land a bit more. Another thing I'll say about this game is that it doesn't start to your second playthrough. Now, not in the usual Platinum way where the second playthrough is meant to use your tools more effectively since you had a few hours of time to get used to them. But here you're missing very important tools from gaining key members or to just their moves that show up later, which leaves less game to really test them out by the time you get them. And even buying must-have accessories and upgrades. Things are a bit spread out and given to the very end. Speaking of which, there's a few big ticket items to snag in the shop that you kinda need. Like the defensive options and the upgrades, the slots, the gear and all. And again, they cost a lot. Take some time to grind the money or ingredients for that credit card to finally even out your base moveset before your second playthrough begins. This isn't too bad. This is the same thing that happened in Samurai Jack Battle Through Time, so it's fine. Plus the game has a sharp learning curve to it as it is that I immediately felt. So there's so many unique mechanics with their little nuances to learn, some do's and don'ts. It's a lot to take in as it is since the gameplay is so different. So adding even more so quick during the early process would give new players a lot to juggle. So it's fine, it takes a bit to get some needed tools because even I had a little rough patch of my own during the first 15 hours of playing. The entire first playthrough basically. So to help out things I wish I knew or general tips, buy Unite Guts, buy its Spike upgrade, buy Unite Spring, buy Hero Time. It's basically Witch Time, because without it you kind of have no follow-ups like Guts has. Buy Unite Charge, so by holding circle you will make your current morph larger. It still consumes battery to do this, but it cuts out the risk of having to draw this huge line that can be broken and all that. And before every fight, hold L1, it'll zoom out the camera, and I didn't know this till about 10 hours in, so yeah. These are necessities to play the game, and some I didn't have for the entire playthrough. So hopefully you'll learn from me and have a better start. So there's a lot to learn, and it might need some time to fully understand kind of the ongoing theme here, honestly. Wonderful 101 is one of the roughest early starts to any game I got into in a long time. And that's for me, the guy who's been playing action games for more than half my life. But don't let that dampen what I said earlier or intimidate you from playing it for yourself. Just know this game is something special and needs to be checked out by fans of Clover, Platinum, and action games in general. There's nothing out there quite like Wonderful 101, so if you're ready to play this high-octane adventure with a group of superheroes, ones who just want to protect the world as a united team, play immediately and join up, because we can always use one more. And alright, for anyone still here, thanks for watching. Today marks the first anniversary of making these videos, and just like I said earlier, 101 remembers its past but looks forward with bright eyes to what's to come. And that's how I feel about the channel. I'm excited to keep at it because we have a lot to cover. So yeah, thanks for watching, the comments, the subscribes, and all that. Any kind of support, because I really do appreciate it. But yeah, till next time.